Boker Tov. We are Be'ezrat Hashem today starting the third Perek Arba Achin, and doing Daf Kaf Vav Amud Bet. So says the Mishnah, jumping right in, this should be familiar. We had this Mishnah quoted a couple of times. Says the Mishnah, Arba Achin, Shnai Mehem Nisuin Shtei Achot. So you have four brothers, two of them are married to two sisters. Umetu hanisuim et ha'achayot. Those two brothers are married to two sisters, die. So now you have two sisters falling to Yibum to two brothers. To each brother, both sisters are falling to Yibum. They're falling both to brother number one, to Reuven, and both to brother number two. So says the Mishnah, Hare'elu choltzot v'lo b'nit Yevamot. These two do chalitza and they cannot do Yibum. The simple this is an isur of achod zekukato, the simple way to put it. We're going to see, we had before, and we're going to see again in the Gemara, really machloket, what the exact reason is. But either way, there's no yibum in such a case. Vim kadmu v'kansu yotziu. And if they do actually both do yibum, brother number one does yibum to one sister, brother number two does yibum to the other sister, yotziu, they have to leave each other. Rabbi Eliezer learns that Beit Shammai omrim yekayim, Beit Hillel omrim yotziu. He says Beit Shammai will tell you yekayim, if they already got married, they're allowed to stay together, and Beit Hillel holds yotziu. Beit Hillel says no, they have to get divorced. Now let's say these two brothers and these two sisters, one of the sisters falling to Yibum is an erva on one of the brothers. Let's say brother number one and sister number one are related. It's his daughter or his mother-in-law or something like that. So in such a case, isur erva, asur ba mutar ba'achota. In that case, the brother is mutar to marry the other Yevamah. He could do Yibum to the sister. Why? Because it's no longer achot zekukato. It's no longer the sister of the lady who he is zekukatu, because he's not zekukat to her. Meaning, generally, brother number one has a zikah to sister number one, and therefore he can't be with sister number two because it's a achot zekukato. And he can't be with sister number one because he has a zikah to sister number two. So sister number one is achot zekukato. But in this case, where one of the sisters is an erva, so he only has a zikah to one sister, he could be with that sister. And the second brother, obviously, v'asheni asur b'shtehen, he's asur on both of them because he still has a zikah from both of them. Isur mitzvah v'isur kedusha. Let's say one of the ladies was asura on one of the brothers, isur mitzvah or isur kedusha. She was either in isur lav, or she was a shniyot la'arayot, isur d'rabanan, to one of the brothers. In such a case, choletz lo mityavemet, she still requires chalitza because there still is a zikah midioraita that needs to be taken care of, and therefore there is still no yibum in such a case. Haita achat men asura al zeh isur erva, shniya asura al zeh isur erva. Now let's say if these two brothers, two sisters fall to them to yibum, sister number one is related to brother number one. It's brother number one's son-in-law. And sister number two is brother number two's son-in-law. So in such a case, the first brother cannot be with the first. There's no zikah from the first brother to the first sister. So the first brother could do yibum to the second sister. And the second brother could do yibum to the first sister, because each one is an erva on one of the brothers, therefore there's no zikah to that brother. Each one has a zikah to the opposite brother, and in such a case, they could both do yibum. That's the case where you have two sisters that are both falling to yibum, and they could do you could do chalitza or yibum in such a case. That's when you have asura lezeh muter lezeh. Okay, so says the Gemara right off the bat, shema mina yesh zikah. What do you see from this Mishnah? You see yesh zikah. Why? because the whole Isur seems to be predicated on the fact that there is Yesh Zikah. And what is Yesh Zikah? So we have a machloket. We have a machloket. Yesh zika or yesh zika or ein zika. Everyone agrees that there is something called zika. That when a brother dies, his wives, however many wives he had, are connected to the other brothers, and they're not allowed to marry anybody from the outside. That's until they have chalitza. That's a pasuk in the Torah. Lo te'esh l'met achutza li'ish zar. She can't marry outside. So everyone agrees there is such a thing called zika. Question is, how strong is it, and what nafkaminas are there between yesh zika and ein zika? So that we discussed. One of the main nafkaminas is does the zika make it already that it's ki'ilu they're married with regard to isurim on their relatives. So if you hold yesh zika, that means that when a lady falls to yibum, her relatives are going to be asurot on the brother. So the Gemara says, Shema mina yesh zika. You see from here yesh zika, because what do you have? Two sisters falling to yibum. So sister number one has a zika, so her sister is going to be asura for yibum. Sister number two has zika, so her sister, lady number one, is also going to be asura yibum. This whole predicated on yesh zika. The whole idea is predicated on yesh zika. So shma mina yesh zika. The ein zika, the Gemara says, if there's no zika, michti hani mitrei bati ka'atyan. These two ladies, these two sisters that fell to yibum, they fell from two different households, from two different brothers. Let them each do yibum to one of the brothers. So the Gemara says, not so fast. Really, I could tell you ein zika. Okay, tov. Really, I could tell you ein zika. And why is it over here that they're not allowed to do yibum to the two sisters that fall to yibum? Because a different reason, it's asur levatel mitzvah yevamin. How you cannot be mevatel the mitzvah of yibum. You can't, or chalitza really. You can't let one of these ladies go out with nothing. You don't want to come to a situation where one of these ladies will not get chalitza or yibum. Now, how would that happen? So says the Gemara, Dilma adam yabem chad ma'it idach. Maybe what will happen before one brother gets once one brother does yibum, then the other brother will die. And you're moving mevatel mitzvah yevamin. So let's play it out. So you have two sisters fall to yibum to two brothers. Okay? So there were four brothers married to, two of them were married to two sisters, those two died. Two sisters fall to yibum to two brothers. So we're worried that if brother number one does yibum, maybe brother number two is going to die, and that other lady now, she won't require chalitza or yibum because she's an erva to him. So since we're worried that you're going to be mevatel mitzvah yevamin, you're going to end up creating a situation where one lady who previously required yibum or chalitza will not require anything. It's asur to cause such a situation. Therefore, we say that the first brother also has to do chalitza. He cannot do yibum, because that way, if he does chalitza, it's okay. If the second lady, the other brother dies, he'll do chalitza to the second lady too. That's not a problem. So
if he if he dies, so then there's achot.
So you have two sisters that fall to two brothers. So the simple understanding of why both sisters require chalitza and nobody could do yibum in such a case is because it's achot zekukato. We say yesh zika, brother number one has zika to this lady, therefore he can't be with the sister. He also has zika to this lady, therefore he can't be with the sister. Right. And same with the second brother. The Gemara says alternatively there's another explanation for this. It doesn't necessarily have to go with yesh zika. Maybe really ein zika, and really brother one could do yibum to one, the other could do yibum to the other. But the reason that it's not allowed is because if one brother does yibum to one sister, maybe the second brother will die, and then this lady is now going to be left with no yibum, no chalitza, which she won't need yibum or chalitza anymore, right, because she's not going to have a zika anymore. So you're basically being mevatel if he doesn't do yibum, so let him do chalitza to the first wife, and then if the brother dies, he'll do chalitza to the other brother's wife, to the second lady, to the sister. That's not a problem. He could do chalitza.
That's not called being mevatel.
No, because he's at least doing something to each house, to each bite. Each bite is getting a chalitza. Whereas in the other situation, if he does yibum and then the second brother then dies, so there's nobody left to do yibum or chalitza to the second lady, so then you're being mevatel the yibum or chalitza from the second lady.
Why did I not call it bittul? The fact that they're doing chalitza, because he's allowing her to be married.
Good, that's a separate question. We had that. We that was more on the original when we first saw the idea, but it's still, you see that chalitza is still considered not a bittul of the inyan of yibum, meaning you're still doing something. Chalitza is interesting. Well, when we get to Perek Mitzvah Chalitza, we'll I don't know if Perek Mitzvah Chalitza, but throughout the Masechet we'll discuss it a little more. Chalitza is a little bit depending on what the exact scenario is, but chalitza is a little bit like in place of yibum. Okay. Fine. So the Gemara says, Ihachi tzlata nami. The Gemara should have said 3 brothers, meaning we have a case of 4 brothers. Arba achim, shnai mem nisuin shtei achayot, and then 2 ladies end up falling to 2 brothers to yibum. So the Gemara says, if it has nothing to do with, if it's because of asur levatel mitzvat yivamin, so the case could have been 3 brothers, and 2 of them are married to 2 sisters. They die, and these 2 sisters fall to 1 brother. Meaning, the way Tosfot explains the question of the Gemara is, what's the chidush in 4? If the chidush is ein zika, yesh zika, if the idea is that, there's a zika between the brothers and the sister is asur because of the zika, so the chidush is even by 2 brothers, yesh zika. So it makes sense why the case would be 4, because there's a bigger chiddush to say yesh zika when you have 2 brothers as opposed to 1 brother. With 2 ladies are falling to yibum to 2 men, still we say yesh zika. That makes sense. But if the chiddush,
had it if 1 person dies and then you have 2 left, 2 brothers and 2 sisters.
No, because 1 person can't be married to 2 sisters. You need 4 brothers to start with. If you want 2 sisters to fall to 2 brothers, you need to start with 4. So the chidush is when they're falling to 2 brothers, yesh zika, even by 2 brothers that they're falling to. But if you're telling me that the issue is, if you're telling me that the issue is not a yesh zika, the issue is asur levatel mitzvat yevamin. So then, what's the chidush in having a case of 4 brothers? Having 3 brothers, if anything, is more of a chidush. The way Tosfot explains, Tosfot says that the reason having 3 would be more of a chidush is because 3 is a ributa tfei, because it's asur levatel afagav dechad minay lo chazi leibume. Right, meaning in a situation where you have 2 sisters falling to 1 brother, still he has to do chalitza to both. Even though anyways not one of them is possible to get yibum, still we say that there's asur levatel mitzvat yibum. So the chiddush would be more with 3 than with 2 than with 4. So the Gemara says no. There's also more of a chidush with 4 if you say the reason is asur levatel mitzvat yevamin. It says the Gemara lo mibaya ka'amar lo mibaya telata. Of course, by 3 brothers, that vaday badla mitzvat yevamin, you're vaday going to be mevatel mitzvat yevamin if you do yibum to the first one, then you can't do to the second one. Aval dalid lemita lo chayshinan. But if there were 4 brothers, I might have thought, let 1 brother do yibum to the first sister, and the other brother will do yibum to the second sister. We're not worried that 1 brother is going to die and the third and the sister is going to be left without yibum or chalitza. Kamash malan. So therefore, it comes to teach us a chidush that no, we're choshesh, even when you have 2 sisters falling to 2 brothers, we say don't do yibum, because if you do yibum, if the first brother does yibum, we're worried that the second brother is going to die, and then that last lady is going to be left without anything. So the Gemara says, Yachi, chamisha nami. So the Gemara says, if that's the case, so then even 5 brothers. You have 5 brothers, 2 of them are married to 2 sisters, those 2 die, so you have 2 ladies falling to 3 brothers, So we should be worried that the first one shouldn't do Yibum because maybe the other two brothers will die and that lady will be left with no Yibum or no Chalitza. So the Gemara says, no, Lemita de Tre Lo Chayshina. We're not worried about Mita of two individuals. Okay, so Ad Kan is the first half. We have to fly a little bit to make it for Shacharit. So Amar Rava bar Rav Huna Amar Rav. Shalosh achayot Yevamot shenaflu livnei shnei achin. So the case was you had 5 brothers. 3 of them were married to 3 sisters. Okay? And then 3 of those brothers you had Shalosh achayot Yevamot shenaflu livnei shnei. Yeah. So 3 of those brothers that were married to 3 sisters died. So now you have these 3 sisters falling to 2 brothers for Yibum. So Rav says something very interesting. Rav Huna Amar Rav. So you have such a case. So Zeh choletz le'echad. The first brother does chalitza to one sister. V'zeh choletz le'echad. And second brother does chalitza to the other sister. Ve'emtzait, and the middle sister, or whatever, the last sister, tzricha chalitza mishneim. She requires chalitza from both of them. Now, why? So the Gemara is going to explain. There's something called chalitza psula. What's chalitza psula? So the way Rashi learns, any scenario where you cannot do yibum and you do chalitza, that's considered chalitza psula. And chalitza psula doesn't mean that it's a pasul chalitza, it means it's a weak chalitza. And a weak chalitza, each brother needs to do that chalitza. Generally, when you have, when just in a regular case, when somebody dies and his wife or his wives fall to yibum, one brother needs to do yibum or chalitza to one of those wives, and we're done. The whole thing is finished. There's no zikah for any of the brothers at all anymore. The one brother does chalitza, and that's it. She can go marry whoever she wants. She is no zikah connected to the family.
When they don't want to get married.
That's in a regular case. A regular case of chalitza, one chalitza patters the whole family. But when you have what's called chalitza psula, it's a very low level chalitza, and each brother needs to do the chalitza for each wife. So over here we're saying that one brother does chalitza to one of the sisters, a second brother does chalitza to the second one of the sisters, and the third brother the third sister, she requires chalitza from both of them. So the Gemara says, and this is so the Gemara says that Amar le Rabba said to him, from the fact that you're saying that the last wife needs chalitza from both of the remaining brothers, so kasavra yesh zika, must be that you hold yesh zika, v'havi chalitza psula, and this type of chalitza was a chalitza psula, v'chalitza psula tzarich lachzor al kol ha'achin, and chalitza psula, she needs to get chalitza from each brother in order to be able to be free. So in a scenario where, the way Rashi learns, in a scenario where yibum is not allowed for whatever reason, a chalitza that's done in such a scenario is called chalitza psula. It's a weak chalitza, and in such a case, for the woman to marry out, for her to fully take care of the zika, she needs chalitza from all the brothers. That's why the last lady has to get chalitza from both brothers. So the Gemara says, one second, things don't add up here. Iachi kamaita nami. The Gemara says, if so, then the first lady also needs chalitza from all the brothers. Everybody would need chalitza from all the brothers. Because what was the case? You have 3 sisters falling to yibum to 2 brothers. So if you're telling me, there's a chalitza psula, and when you can't do yibum, the chalitza needs to be done by all the brothers. So brother number 1 can't do yibum to any of them, because maybe he has a zika to the first one, and the other 2 are the sisters, achot zekukato. So he can't do yibum to them, can't do yibum to any of the sisters. So she should require chalitza from each brother. Since yibum is not an option, she has to get chalitza from each brother, because it's a chalitza psula, it's a weak chalitza.
Why only the emtzait?
Exactly, that's the question of the Gemara. That's exactly the question of the Gemara. So the Gemara says, "Yachi kamaita nami," the first lady also. So the Gemara says, really, you're right. If they all fell at the same time, meaning they all fell, and before all those three brothers all died like around the same time, and no chalitza happened before the next brother died. So then they all have a zikah at the same time. So then enachanami, says the Gemara, you're right. In such a case, each one would need chalitza from each brother. But this case is different. Lo tzricha denafel bezu acharzu. Over here, we're talking about a case where they fell bezu acharzu. Not each brother fell. Not each sister fell. They didn't all. Not each brother. All the brothers did not die at the same time, but rather brother number one died. The Gemara is going to explain. So bezu acharzu. Nafla chada. One brother died and his wife fell to yibum. So chalatz la Reuven, the first remaining brother, did yibum. Nafla idach, the second lady fell to yibum, meaning the other brother died. So for Reuven, that would be a chalitza psula, because he's not allowed to do yibum to her because it's his wife's. I'm sorry, not chalitza psula. It would be nothing. It would be there's no zikah for Reuven. It falls to Shimon. Naflaida chalatz la Shimon. Shimon falls. Shimon did. I'm sorry. Reuven did chalitza. It would be achot chalutzato. So for Reuven, he can't do chalitza. It would be a chalitza psula. For Shimon, for the other remaining brother, he could do chalitza because he wasn't involved in any chalitza yet. So Shimon does chalitza. Naflaida chalatz lahai mafka zikato. Chalatz lahai mafka zikato. And then when the third sister falls, so Reuven does chalitza and takes care of his portion of the zika, and Shimon does chalitza and takes care of his portion of the zika. So what are we saying? So in the case is that three sisters fall to two brothers, but one after the other. First, one sister falls, and then Reuven does chalitza to her. Then the second sister falls. Now for Reuven, it's achot chalutzato. There's an isur to do yibum d'Rabbanan. So his chalitza would be a weak chalitza. So Shimon does chalitza to her. Then the third sister falls. So now each of them are gonna be. It's gonna be a weak chalitza for each of them. Therefore, they both have to do it. The Gemara says, "V'amar Rav ein zika." Rav says ein zika. So how could Rav get involved in chalitza psula? It's all predicated on the fact that yesh zika. So the Gemara says. He's going according to the opinion that says yesh zika. Okay, Shmuel Amar, let's try to finish this up. Shmuel Amar, Achad choletz lekulan. Shmuel says that in such a case, one brother does chalitza to everybody. You don't need all the brothers, both of the brothers, to do chalitza to the emtzait. So the Gemara says, Michti. Shamina leili Shmuel damar chalitza ma'aliyah bainan. The Gemara says, okay, so first things first, we have on the table, we know that Shmuel holds that chalitza psula is also no good. You need a chalitza ma'aliyah. You need a strong chalitza. How do we know that? Damar Shmuel chalatz la'achayot lo nifteru tzarot. If you have a case where two sisters fall to two brothers, and those sisters also have tzarot, so since he cannot do yibum to the sisters, the chalitza that he does to the sister is not poter the tzara. If he does chalitza to the tzara, that's poter the everybody. But if he does chalitza to one of the sisters that he's not allowed to do yibum to, so that won't be poter the tzara. So you see that a weak chalitza is not poter in a case where you could do a strong chalitza. So Shmuel agrees to the concept of chalitza psula. So the Gemara says, yeah, even though Shmuel holds chalatza achayol nifter tzarot, so the Gemara says hecha dekaima chalitza de Shimon chalitza kshera. When in our case where you have the two brothers to the three sisters, yeah. So when Reuven's chalitza is a chalitza psula, he said one brother does chalitza to all. So after the first sister fell to Reuven and Reuven did chalitza, so now second lady falls to Reuven and Shimon. So Shimon's chalitza would be a strong chalitza because it's not achot chalutzato for Shimon, but it's achot chalutzato for Reuven. He cannot do yibum to her, so his chalitza is a weak chalitza. So the Gemara says, "Hecha dekaima chalitza de Shimon chalitza kshera." When you have Shimon's chalitza would be a full-on 100% chalitza. Chalitza Reuven chalitza psula. While Reuven is gonna do a chalitza psula over here, why would Shmuel say such a thing that one brother should do chalitza to all of them? Reuven's chalitza is a chalitza psula. It's a weak chalitza because it's achot zekukato. So the Gemara gives an answer. The Gemara is going to give two answers. So, my echad choletz lekulan. What does it mean when it says echad choletz lekulan? Nami de kamar emtzait. It's talking about the emtzait. Meaning, when it says echad choletz lekulan, it means one brother has to do chalitza to the emtzait. It's true. Not one brother is going to do chalitza to all the ladies in this situation. Let's just speak it out. So you have two brothers, Reuven and Shimon. First, one sister falls. Reuven does chalitza. Then sister number 2 falls. At first, we thought Shmuel was saying Reuven should do chalitza to her also. Says the Gemara, no. That's not what Shmuel is saying. Shmuel is saying in that case, Shimon does chalitza to the second one. Then when the third sister falls, the machloket Rav and Shmuel was Rav said both need to do chalitza. Shmuel is saying no, not both need to do chalitza. In such a case, one brother needs to do chalitza. Echad choletz lekulan means one brother does chalitza on the emtzait. Now, what's the chidush of Shmuel? That even though generally chalitza psula is not good, but in such a case where either brother she'll be going to, she's going to be getting a chalitza psula, so then it's fine. She doesn't need to go follow after all the brothers and get chalitza from each one. So says the Gemara, chalitza Reuven, chalitza psula. So the Gemara says, "Kulan kamar." But it said kulan. It sounds like one brother is doing chalitza to each of the 3 sisters. So the Gemara says, "Kevan deruba gabe kari le kulan." Since he's doing chalitza to most of the sisters, it's called kulan. V'bait ema, or the Gemara says a different teretz to explain Shmuel. Kika amar Shmuel chalitza me'aliyah bainan hani mili miftar tzara. When Shmuel says chalitza psula is not enough, that's to be poter the tzara. When you have multiple wives, so you're doing chalitza to somebody who yibum cannot be done to, that won't be poter the tzara. Meaning, if 3 ladies fall to yibum, a brother died and he had 3 wives. Mm-hmm. One of them, the brother cannot do yibum to for some reason. Not because it's an erva, but for some other reason he cannot do yibum to. So a chalitza to her won't pater the tzara because that's a weak chalitza. Maybe he only agrees to the concept of chalitza psula in the context of doing yibum to one woman will be poter her tzara. So chalitza psula won't be poter the tzara. Aval mifter nafsha patra. But for the lady herself, for the Yevamot, she doesn't have to go after all the brothers. Meaning, a chalitza psula that she's getting will be enough for her, but it won't be enough to be pater the other tzarot. That would be the understanding of Shmuel. So the nafkamina between the two answers, I think Rashi points out, right, nafkamina would be if there are tzarot. Another nafkamina would be if what will be with the second wife. Meaning, according to the second answer of the Gemara, one brother could do chalitza to all 3. According to the first answer, Reuven has to do chalitza to the first one, Shimon has to do chalitza to the second one, and then one brother will do chalitza to the last one, because mimanav shach, she's getting the same level chalitza from the last one. But when it's possible to do a higher level chalitza, you have to do the higher level chalitza. So Reuven will have to do chalitza to the first, and then Shimon will have to do chalitza to the second one, because Reuven would be a lower level, and we don't do a lower level chalitza when a higher level chalitza is available. And the last one, they're both the same, so it doesn't matter who does it. But according to the second teretz of the Gemara, the first brother could do chalitza to all of them, because the only time Shmuel will say there's an issue of a weak chalitza, of a chalitza psula, is when you're doing chalitza on one lady to be pater the tzara. In this situation, you're not doing that. The 3 ladies, each one could get chalitza from one of the brothers. Doesn't make a difference. That would be according to that would be enough coming in between the first and second teretz in Shmuel. Okay.